We're about to begin tonight's program, and kind of settle down. And come on down, come down to the front row, get a great view. My name is Stephen Murphy. I have the privilege of being the chair of the Wellesley Democratic Town Committee, and this fall and into the winter, the Town Committee is producing a series of forums to provide an opportunity for the public to meet a number of the candidates who are running for statewide office in 2014. The main focus is on the gubernatorial candidates. Tonight we did have scheduled Senator Feingold as a candidate treasurer, but his day job, the state senate, is in session, so he had to attend to business there, and at some point he may come. There is quite a number of people that are involved in producing these, and I don't know if it's out of modesty or time or the risk that I might forget the names, but they've asked not to go to the list, but you've seen them around, and certainly say thank you. Tonight, our guest is a local son, Joe Avellone. Many of us have known for many years. And he is on a quest to be elected governor in 2014. It's a great pleasure to have him tonight. Other dates of our forum will be December 2nd, December 18th, and January 15th. And later in the spring, we would probably have other events for some of the other constitutional offices. One thing that I think that will come through these forums is a couple of strengths of the Democratic Party. One is its diversity. Okay. Diversity from experience, perspectives, ideas. Okay. But it's also unified because all of that is for one purpose, and that is to find a way to make life better for all of us in this town, in this state, in this country. Now, I've talked enough, and I see everybody settled down. So our events shall now start in earnest. Our moderator is the charming and ever popular Rick Ridley. And at this point, Rick, it's yours.
I'm blushing, Steve. So, a few words about tonight's format. Dr. Joe Avellone, candidate for governor, is with us tonight, and he's going to speak his piece. And then there's going to be time for questions, and then there should be quite a bit of time for refreshments. And I hope that Joe will be able to stay with us and hang out for a while and have a cookie and a glass of coffee or something with us. Anyway, and I want to thank you, Joe, for your flexibility and coming a little bit earlier tonight, since we did have a cancellation, so thank you very much. Anyway, some opening remarks about our candidate. Joe Avellone is a lifelong Democrat and a Wellesley resident who's running for governor of Massachusetts. Joe received his undergraduate degree from Dartmouth College and his MD from Harvard Medical School. Between his internship and surgical residency, he earned a Master's of Public Administration at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. He spent 5 years as a resident surgeon at Brigham and Women's Hospital before moving to New Hampshire, where he served as a surgeon at Concord Hospital. Following his experience as a surgeon, Joe decided he could best serve his community through a career in healthcare management, focused on the healthcare system itself, serving as Chief Operating Officer for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts and Chief Executive Officer of Veritas Medicine, a startup internet company. And I believe most recently he was Corporate Senior Vice President at Parexel International, a global biopharmaceutical research company, whatever that means. Additionally, Joe was a member of the United States Navy Reserve's Medical Corps, where he attained the rank of Lieutenant Commander, and he's also an active volunteer for Boston Healthcare for the Homeless, where he has held leadership positions. His past political involvement includes volunteering on various Democratic presidential campaigns, serving as the health care advisor to Senator Paul Tsongas's presidential campaign, and on Senator John Kerry's presidential campaign finance committee. From a local perspective, Joe served as Wellesley Selectman from 1990 to 1996, including chair of the Selectmen. He and his wife Sandy have lived in Wellesley for 29 years, and their 3 children attended Wellesley Public Schools from kindergarten through high school. Joe, all yours.
Thank you so much, Rick. And thank you all for being here tonight. This is really wonderful to see. It's great to see some old faces and some longtime members of the Democratic Town Committee and many people that I do know. But it's great to see so many people that I don't know. It really speaks to how the Democrats have grown and gotten energized over the last several years, and certainly under Lisa's and Amy's leadership. And my congratulations to them. And the longer time members of the DTC for the energized group that you really have become here in Wellesley. It's great to see it. And I have to say, I have seen it all over the state, so I think the Democratic Party is alive and well. I can tell you that in forums all over the state like this, people turn out and talk about a race that's still a year away. That speaks very well of our party, very well of the Commonwealth itself. I'm so pleased to be here also because this will be the shortest commute after an event that I've had since 9 months, and Sandy is even more pleased than I am. She's been in these towns as well. For those of you who don't know me, I am Joe Avellone. I'm running for governor in 2014, and I'm running because I love Massachusetts. I love its people, I love our history, and I believe that we all should try our best to do everything we can to continue to better the lives of all the people in our state. We are a Commonwealth, and that really is our bond. And I've spent most of the last 40 years of my life trying to help people. I started by going to Harvard Medical School, I hate to tell you how many years ago, 40 years ago, and then continued on as I became a surgeon at Brigham and Women's Hospital. And then, as Rick said, I did have the privilege of being a surgeon and operating on people for years, and that is a great privilege indeed. But taking care of patients one at a time was one thing, and I thought that I could have a bigger impact overall on people if I became a leader and a manager in our own healthcare system. And that's really been the arc of my career for the past 30 years. I was the chief operating officer of Blue Cross and Blue Shield in the 1990s when we modernized Blue Cross. We formed HMO Blue, and we formed many of the service lines and product lines that you're all familiar with today. And we did control our healthcare costs. And we did institute quality measures that exist today. And then I started my own healthcare company, and it was to use the internet to hopefully shorten the timelines for drug development. It takes 10 years or more to develop a drug. And the internet company that I formed was focused on trying to identify and qualify people that would be interested in clinical trials and match them into clinical trials as a way to shorten the overall timeline of development. And then for the last 7 years, I've been running a large global division of an international medical research company based right here in Massachusetts called Parexel. We have 15,000 employees in 50 countries, and 2,000 of them here in Massachusetts. So I have a global workforce, and I compete in the global marketplace every day. And more than anything, I understand what we as Massachusetts is going to be competing with, our young people and our mid-career people, in order to bring the new industries and the new jobs here that are going to be so necessary for our Commonwealth going forward. So now I want to do everything I can to preserve what's great about Massachusetts, what's so special about our place, and grow it for generations to come. But we've been through very tough times over the last 5 years, as I know you all know. But it's a devastating recession. It's been a slow and agonizing recovery, and it's been very uneven across the state. And I can tell you it's taken quite a toll on our working families and many other people. I've been in 122 towns since this campaign started, some many times. And if, like me, I've now met thousands of people, if you are looking into the sad eyes of someone who has been looking for a job for 2 years, or if you're talking to someone who has a job, but it's a menial job compared to the skills that they have, and they don't have any real idea how they're going to work their way back to the profession that was their chosen profession. Or if you're talking to a young woman who's lost her permanent job and now has 2 part-time jobs just to get enough food on the table, for her children, but still not be able to dig out of the hole from the recession, you know that this recession is still very close. And we are recovering very unevenly. We have big pockets of 10% plus unemployment in some of our so-called gateway cities, these older urban environments where we've been in decline for some time. We have to do better. And our future really is bringing jobs to the Commonwealth, new jobs based on new industries. But we won't be able to do this with business as usual. It's going to take bold action and a new approach. With the new century comes new industries. And our new jobs are going to be based on those new industries that Massachusetts has to adopt. Our new jobs are going to be based on things like precision manufacturing and smart manufacturing, life sciences and healthcare certainly, IT, telecommunications, alternative energy. This is the future for us. And we have to make sure that Massachusetts is the fertile ground to bring these businesses here and have them expand here. And that is going to be the main job of the next governor and the main focus of the next administration. But in order to do that, we're going to have to think boldly and do things differently. In a sense, in order to be true to our democratic values of wanting to bring up and help and support and grow a middle class, we have to do things boldly and differently than we have in the past. And if we do that, I know that we can be successful. Thinking boldly is going to require a new kind of partnership between our education system, our state and community education system in general, and vocational schools, in order to understand the new work skills that are involved with these new industries and make sure that every graduate of our community, state college, and even vocational high schools have the skill set that will set them up for success, and also the skill sets that will bring the new businesses here so that they will expand here. We need to do that, and I can tell you from doing business all over the world that if we have the workforce that does have the skill sets, we will be able to bring these businesses here, and they will be the basis of our new economy. So we need to think boldly and differently with this, and we need to enter into a new kind of partnership. We also have to expand vocational educational schools. We have to bring it back into our traditional curriculums more, and we have to work with the regional vocational technical schools that have been growing up around the state to make sure that they have the modern skills once again for the new jobs. Education and job creation are completely linked. You cannot separate them. Education is a wonderful thing in its own sake for us to be better human beings. But it is also completely linked to the job market. And so that is why I have already published my K-12 positions on my website and have been around the state being interviewed with them because I think this is so fundamental. And my complete and first priority in that is closing our achievement gap. I've been in many of these so-called gateway cities, these older communities that are in decline, and I can tell you we are not serving these children well in too many of these communities. There are thousands of kids still in our state every year who are being failed by our school system. Not every school, but in too many schools, so that they either don't finish school, or even if they do finish school, they really are unprepared for jobs, even in today's economy, let alone tomorrow's economy. And we can't do that anymore. There's an urgency here because every year there's a cohort of these kids going off onto a bridge to nowhere, frankly. In Fall River the other day, I was there, 35% of adults don't have a high school education. It's very hard to bring back Fall River until we at least have people that have a decent high school education. And this is where we have to start, and that's why closing the achievement gap, in addition to bringing the new job skills for the new industries, is what's important. And when we've done both of those things, then we will create the middle jobs for the new Commonwealth, and we will have brought many more people into the middle class over time. Thinking bold is also going to require taking on our biggest financial issue, and that's healthcare costs. We know that we have some of the finest healthcare in the world, not the finest system overall, but certainly some of the finest institutions. I certainly spent a lot of years in one of those institutions, and I understand how great they really can be. I understand the wonderful care that can be there, their value to medical research really internationally, and even their importance to our economy. But we have the highest healthcare costs in the world on a per capita basis, and it's squeezing our families, and it's squeezing our businesses. And now it's 40% of our state budget. It's 40%. That's up from 20% just 12 years ago, and it continues to rise. And that is going to cause us to defer or deny all of our other priorities that I've just been talking about: workforce development, education, infrastructure, transportation, alternative energy development, and the like. So the next governor is going to have to work with all of our major healthcare institutions and the legislature to change the way we actually deliver healthcare, to move it from a relatively uncontrolled, uncoordinated, and certainly perversely incented fee-for-service system, and move it towards organized systems of care with groups of doctors managing populations of patients according to best practices. And when we do that, we will have better outcomes for our patients, better life for our doctors, frankly, and a better, more moderate, affordable healthcare structure overall. There are models on how to do this in the country. It's not how to do it, it's having the political will to do it. I've worked with all of these major institutions when I was at Blue Cross. I know what we need to do, and I know that I can deliver affordable health care for our state. And I know that the next governor has to take the lead in this, because that is the person that represents all of our stakeholders. And that is the person who's going to have to drive this until we get to that system. And we will be leaders in Massachusetts when we do this, but the nation will have to come along as well. And I think it's a challenge that we can take on. I think we need to take on, and I know that we can be successful. So no one person can do all the things I've just been talking about. It takes collective action and a lot of people of goodwill. It reminds me that Bill Clinton at the Democratic National Convention just 2 summers ago said, a political philosophy that's built on we are all in this together is much, much stronger than one that's on your own, that says you're on your own. Well, I certainly believe that's true. And I know that all of you in this room believe it's true, or you wouldn't be here tonight. And I can tell you, I think many people and most people in the Commonwealth too. Because I think we've been a Commonwealth much of our history. I think that's why we've been able to exceed and succeed in hard things like education and healthcare that take a shared purpose and a common agreement on how to proceed. I think we can do that again. But we're in one of those times now when we need to renew the new Commonwealth for the new kind of economy and quality of life that we're going to build for our children and our children's children. And we're going to have to do things differently and boldly in order to succeed. And it's going to take a governor that has the background and the skills and the willingness to be bold in order to succeed. And I think I know I can be that governor. I can do it in this time, and I can do it for our Commonwealth. You know, a lot of people ask me, why do I want to be governor? I've had a 30-year career, I guess 40 at this point, in healthcare. And I've always been interested in public service, but I can tell you maybe with this story. I was in Roxbury about 6 or 8 weeks ago now, and I was looking for programs that work in one of our inner cities, frankly, and that could be replicated in others, because I think that's a way that the state can really help our so-called gateway cities. And so I was getting to know a program called Haley's Bakery and Cafe. It's part of Haley House. Bakery and Cafe is a program that is for young people who have been in jail. Literally, they're almost children, but young people that have been in jail and have come out, and they are found and come into this program, and they teach them baking and catering skills for 6 months. And then they find them jobs. This restarts their life. And it was a wonderful tour, and I think it's a great program. And I was standing in the parking lot afterwards and getting ready to go to the next place, and a young man that I had met inside came out afterwards and said, before you leave, I really just want to tell you that this place has saved my life. And I said, he said, I grew up a couple blocks from here. I went the wrong way. I got in with the wrong group. I went to jail. I did my time. And when I came out, I was completely lost. He said, I so easily could slip back into the life. But this program found me. I came in, I was trained for the 6 months, and now I have 2 part-time jobs. And he said, I have 2 little boys. And they couldn't be more proud of me than if I was going to Harvard. That's why I want to be governor. I want to make sure that everybody in our Commonwealth has a chance for a productive life, and I know we can do that. So I'm going to stop now and ask for your questions and comments. I certainly would love to know your thoughts about the Commonwealth and where we go from here.
Thank you, Joe. You've got So I'd ask you to raise your hand and stand up when you're called upon. And we've got about 30 minutes for questions for Joe, so who wants to go first?
Yes?
Yes, Keith, I was wondering how infrastructure and transportation fits into your priority.
It does. Clearly, you can't build a new economy. Essentially, in the end, that's what will happen over the next decade without really improving our infrastructure. So it certainly is an issue. And as I've been all over the state, I see how diverse our transportation needs really are. I mean, immediately we think of mass transportation in eastern Massachusetts, and some of us think of the South Coast Rail in particular as a key to rebuilding the South Coast. Actually, if you're in the western part of the state, or even in Taunton in the southeast, their big issue is the RTA. What they need is more regional transit authority, more buses. And it's very hard for them to get from town to town. it really hinders the economic recovery there. They don't have two cars in these families. They often may not have one car. They often have to go to another town for work or certainly to buy things. So I think we have to be very careful about how our priorities sort out, but in the end it requires more investment, which is of course what I'm sure is at the basis of your question, and we do need to make the investment. I did agree with what the legislature did with the tax, with the raising of the gas tax. As we brought it up 3 cents to the national average. Since then, gas has gone down 50 cents. So, the up and down of gas itself is more than the range in which the taxation increases that we were talking about are. And we may have to do more. And I think in the end, it's some combination of raising the gas tax a little more and probably more tolling. But the tolling is without toll booths. We will have to have technology that allows us to know how far we've driven, how much we've used these roads. And then I think we have to strike the balance of the public good. How much of our infrastructure is for the public good, and how much of it tilts towards the users, and therefore the heavier users paying more. So in the end, I think it's the gas tax and some tolling, but I think it's dedicated revenues for infrastructure itself. I don't know if that answers your question. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. You said 40% of the budget, is that the state budget is goes
Yeah.
to healthcare? You mean healthcare for employees of the state?
No, healthcare for us, so it's mass health and the employees and the cities and towns and other healthcare related costs. But it is essentially it's healthcare delivery in the state budget.
And you said that's doubled in 12 years?
Yeah.
So what's the driver for that, and what did you do so that we don't have that increase?
Yeah, well, first of all, the important thing is the healthcare inflation started long before we got to universal health. We have universal health. We've had for 7 years, everybody being insured. That's a much, much better thing for our state, and obviously the country will get there too with the Affordable Care Act. But we have a system that works. 99% of us are insured. This is much, much better than it was before. So this is a success. And the increase in healthcare costs have started long before that, so it's not driven completely by that and by any stretch. It's driven by the way we practice healthcare, by the way we practice medicine, and this has always been the case. That we have a relatively uncoordinated system. We still have a massive system, 18% of our economy, that operates like a cottage industry. All individual doctors making individual decisions without a general agreement on best practices. And without a focus, at least the system isn't set up to focus on that. This is no indictment of the doctors. The doctors are all trying to do their best. They're all doing the best they can and know. This is an indictment of how we're organized. And we would not run any other large enterprise that amounts to anything like 18% of the economy in such an uncoordinated way as we do healthcare. Now, many of you probably have experienced this. I don't know how many of you have either with a loved one or yourself even gone to a doctor, been referred to another, on to a third, lots of tests. The tests don't follow. The first doctor doesn't agree with the second. This is not the way we need to practice medicine in the future. Doctors today even are trained to collaborate more and operate in teams with a much closer connection to what they consider best practices and with information technology that will allow them to make point-of-care decisions. So this is what is called organized systems of care, and that's where we have to move. The fee-for-service system, the way we pay the doctors and the hospitals and all the other diagnostic providers, provides all the wrong incentives. I mean, all we've done for the most part to try and control costs in healthcare for the last 20 years, including Medicare, Medicaid, private insurers, is lower the rates that we pay the providers, the doctors primarily. And then all that means in a fee-for-service system is they have to see more patients in less time. They have to do more procedures to make the same living that they did 3 years earlier. This is all the wrong incentives. What we need to do is get away from fee-for-service, pay doctors differently so that they have a stable income but also can be rewarded for good outcomes for their patients. This provides the right incentives, and it allows dollars to be spent more upfront in prevention and early diagnosis and away from the back end of the heavy, intensive extra testing and all the things that go on. Yeah. So we can get into a very detailed discussion, but generally the main message to you is we have to start working on how the delivery system itself works. Now the good news is we're starting down that road. It's not starting from scratch. I mean, some of our major institutions are already working on getting the doctors organized into larger groups, having them adopt best practices. This is all the right direction. And we also now, as a state, collecting all the data to show what the patterns of care are and how they might vary from one institution to another. And that was since we passed a law about 2 years ago called the Hospital Cost Control, or the Healthcare Cost Control Act, established a Health Policy Commission, and that commission has been collecting the data. And that data is going to be very useful. It's like anything. The data shows us the way, and that'll be the case in our study to control healthcare costs. So, by the fact we already got universal health care, and now we have this data collection system, we will be able to move down this road. But it's going to take a lot of political leadership, and it needs to be a priority of the next governor. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Lorraine Greenfield. I'm really concerned about the insurance companies, and I don't know what control the state has over them. I belong to a Tufts plan through Wellesley University. I have a long-term care policy because I feel I don't want my children to have to take care of me, and I need some protection. Last week I got a letter from the insurance company, and they said to prepare for future costs, they are raising my premium by 75%. I don't know how many people, I'm going to do it because otherwise I'd have to leave and then go into another policy at a later age. Talk about control.
So,
Outright highway robbery.
Is this is the long-term care policy?
Yes.
Not the
Yes.
healthcare policy.
No, I've got that
As
separate.
bad as everything I just said, it wouldn't be 75%, but on the long-term care, that is a immature market and a difficult market, and it isn't very well regulated.
Not at all.
And it may be that, first of all, I think we need long-term care insurance, but it may be that we need more regulation around it. And
all
it's difficult because if you think about it, the way insurance works is you have to get people. In order to make long-term care insurance affordable over time, you have to have a lot of people in the system, which means they have to buy into the idea that they need long-term insurance for the future when they're younger. And this is a sale that hasn't really taken hold very well yet, but ultimately that's what's going to happen. But I think in order to prevent real abuse, we probably have to regulate it more, and I'm not familiar with the amount of regulation.
There'll be a lot of people pretty soon that will be coming into this, and I think this is very much an abuse right now.
Okay. Yes.
Joe, Phil Jutras. Going back to your point about jobs, in Boston a number of years ago, we had some large companies that had a conscience. We had Polaroid that ran one of the most effective job training programs called Polaroid Inner City that trained thousands of people in the urban area to get jobs at Polaroid and other companies. We had DEC, who had a big company manufacturing center on Harrison Avenue, where I think there were like 16 different languages spoken. They were developing people who hadn't had jobs. John Hancock, before it was bought, did a lot of that also. But today, it's extremely difficult when you have even skilled and white-collar unemployed to get the larger companies to reach out and do their share of hiring. What do you think the role of a governor's office will be in dealing with that?
First of all, you're making a great point. So just generally, I talked about how we, and certainly as governor, I am going to push our community and state colleges to reach out proactively to the newer industries and the new companies. But it's a two-way street. In return, as governor, I'm going to push them to seek us and to understand what they can do to contribute. And they can contribute in a couple of ways, just as you're describing. Instead of just waiting to receive the finished, trained workers that would be available to them, I think they need to help participate, not only in helping us understand the job skill requirements, but providing mentorships, internships, and other kinds of programs, especially inner-city programs for underrepresented minorities in the program. So this is going to be the two-way street. Why I called it a partnership is I think it's going to be a partnership between these new companies or even old companies and how they're going to relate to our education system. So I completely agree with you. It's going to be a two-way street. If they want us to have our education system attuned to creating serving the needs of theirs for tomorrow, they need to help us do that today. And I think that's at the high school level as well. In my K through 12 policy, where I focused on the at-risk or underperforming schools, part of the answer is pre-K, part of the answer is lengthening the school day. And in that lengthened school day, for those schools where the state is going to take an active role in my administration, a lot of the extra time is for enrichment programs and academic support. It's not more class time. And we need to have and also arts and things that are now out of the schools are too much. But we also need to have the engagement of the working community to help us to provide role models, to help provide the STEM kind of initiatives that we want, and to get people interested in the career paths that we need. So we need to have them physically come and work with the schools. And the final thing I would say is I think we need vocational training to be back into the curriculum and also into our technology schools, and we need links into the workforce with those. A good example I ran into once again in Roxbury was at Madison Park High School, where they do have an it's an auto repair shop, and they have a long-term relationship with the body shop, which is actually an auto body repair shop, which is in Roxbury as well. That's a small collaboration, but that's the kind of thing that needs to be expanded by a lot. In that case, they work with the body shop. The body shop works with them. They generate interns. The internships, the students then go to the internships and do them, and then even leave the body shop and go on into the workplace. So there's a seamless entry. And then the final thing I'd say is my own company, RxL, right here in the biotech capital of the world, we didn't have enough of a certain kind of employee that essentially requires a certificate program at a community college after a biology degree to help monitor the clinical trials in this state, let alone around the rest of the world. And we developed a program in Salem State. So we brought our academy people from Germany to help teach them the curriculum. Salem State adopted the curriculum. They adopted a certificate program. And we hired the graduates out of that program. This is what we have to do many, many times over. And the companies, like we did in this case, have to participate to do that. I'm sorry. Yes.
I had a question about, you have already addressed K-12 education and the importance of narrowing the achievement gap. My question is about what we know about the rapidity of brain growth pre-age 5. What is your vision for Massachusetts as far as early childhood education goes?
Well, I'm a huge proponent of early childhood education, and in my plan, I focus on the state funding it for these at-risk schools, because I would love to have every school district in the state have pre-K, but I don't think this is an entitlement that the state government should fund. I think it should encourage it. It should do what it can do to have it happen, and actually build it into the budgets for the new reimbursement formulas to the degree they can do that. But ultimately, wealthier school districts can do it or not do it. In these troubled school districts, where we know it has a huge impact, just as you're saying, we know that if you're literate by the 3rd grade, you have a much, much higher chance of finishing high school or even going on to have more education beyond that, and certainly to be able to have a productive career. So it's vitally important that we invest in pre-K in these at-risk schools and for these at-risk populations in order to do that. So that's what I'm proposing for the state, and it's going to be my highest priority. I am going to create a special fund for pre-K of $250 million, and it's going to be targeted at these school districts. It's also going to be a revolving fund, kind of a social investment fund in a way. I mean, it's a public fund from the legislature, but if you can have the majority of the students able to read at age 3, the repeat years, the special education costs, all of that goes down, and they can start to repay back into this fund, so it becomes a permanent revolving fund for the troubled schools. So I'm a big believer with you. I don't think it's something the state can just do, but I think we can do it for these troubled schools where it's going to have a huge impact.
I read your education plan, and it's terrific.
Thankful.
But there's something about our current, a lot of things are problems, one in particular. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on it. The MCAS has distorted the education system. And if you look at it carefully, you find out that in the lower income community, there was almost exclusive reliance on that damn test. The wealthier communities, like Wellesley and others, don't worry about it for a lot of reasons. That test, as I understand it, was originally designed to be diagnostic for students, which makes sense on that. It has become the tail that wags the dog, and it's distorted. I don't think and I think that's wrong, and I just wonder what your thoughts are. For example, private schools are excluded from the education reform. They don't have to worry about the MCAS. Their kids do well too. And what it does, and I've seen it in operation, kids learn to take the test and do well, and the president governor and his cohorts crow about how much It doesn't tell me as a teacher anything about whether those kids are educated. So I'm just asking what your thoughts are on that, Joe.
First of all, my hat's off to the educators in the room, because this is an amazing profession, and all of my efforts around anything that the state can do is really to support teachers, especially in these troubled schools. But I completely agree with you. I think teaching to the test, is the term, is a losing proposition. It doesn't create an educated person, and it gives you a false understanding of what they really can do, what students really can do, and all the notions of critical thinking and even understanding things that aren't in the tests are gone. So we have to make sure that first of all, I think our testing system, in order to understand where we are as a state, does need to evolve, and it needs to evolve in a more holistic way. And it does have to evolve so that we can start to understand if the learnings, like you're referring to, are really happening, because you're not going to get it from the MCAS test. And I recognize that gets more challenging in these four school districts. But I'm, and I know we're going to try this new test now, the PARC test, and we're going to pilot that. I'm all for the evolution of performance evaluation to get more holistic. We've been at it now for a while. We started out with the test. That was a good first step. I think it should continue to evolve. And there are, there are parallels here with the workplace generally. We have performance in the workplace, and we have performance evaluations, and it's holistic. It's not based on one thing or one test. And I think this is ultimately where we have to go for the student, for teacher, and for school evaluations.
The workplace is not a multiple choice.
Exactly.
Thank you. Good.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Following the horrific tragedy at Newtown last December, a number of groups sprung up to address issues of gun violence. And so I've been part of, and I think several people here are also part of the Massachusetts Coalition to Prevent Gun Violence. Yeah. And they've taken 5 positions on 5 different issues, and I was wondering if you could address that. I don't know if you want me to list all 5 of them. It has to do with...
You could, or I could tell you generally what I think, and then I don't know, but either way, we do
whatever.
Either way. I mean, generally, I agree with even stronger restrictions around anything that is remotely like an assault rifle or a semi-automatic. I mean, having large magazines with rapid fire, which are only useful for killing people, should not be allowed to be sold in our state. And I know we have laws against that already, and I think continuing to see if we can cut down on the magazine size is a good thing. As far as making sure that everybody's registered, so clearly closing the loopholes around gun shows and other ways that people can find guns and buy guns and not be registered, so we don't even know who has the guns, has got to be tightened up dramatically.
Including private sales, would you add
Yeah,
that?
I would. To me, I'm very aggressive. I'm a surgeon. At the beginning, I spent a lot of years taking care of trauma, including a lot of gunshot and knife wounds in our inner city. It's tragic. And my effort is let's preserve life, let's not make it easier to have mass killings. So you find me very bullish on gun restrictions. And the hard part then, but what I still believe we have to go down this road, is the balance between privacy around mental health and public safety. And I think we've now learned tragically that we need to shift this balance a little bit. That I think we are going to need, in a very sophisticated and nuanced way, allow our local police and authorities to know about people that might have the ability to be dangerous in our neighborhoods. Otherwise, we're going to have more of what we've just been through the last couple of years. And so it's difficult to find that balance. I think it can be done. I think between the modern technology and all the security around that, we can find a way to let our local police chiefs know people who might have dangerous tendencies and may have the ability to be in possession of guns. I think we have to do that. So between the restrictions on the guns, the closing of the registry, of the loopholes that prevent being registered, and certainly not have, having a little better idea of people that might be dangerous in our communities, but still trying to protect privacy generally with mental health, I think are the main things. Are there other aspects of the...
Well, you addressed the background checks at every point of sale,
Yeah.
Limiting the handguns to 1 per month in order to prevent the straw of
Yeah,
purchases.
I agree with that too.
Expanding the existing suitability standard, and you addressed that too, giving greater discretion. Sharing records of adjudicated commitments for mental health, you've addressed that, and substance abuse with the National Instant Check System. And then the last one is requiring local law enforcement authorities to attempt to determine every time a gun is involved in an injury or death who owned the gun and where the gun came from.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And one other thing, and maybe this gets to that, which is we still have a lot of guns being smuggled into the state from other states. And I think we have to work aggressively with other states, and we kind of know the patterns of where they're coming from. We have to work with those states where we know a lot of the guns show up here in our inner cities and try and shut this down, because they aren't registered and it is difficult. And we're only dealing with part of the problem if we don't deal with those. So that's hard, and that's going to be shutting down smuggling essentially, and that's what we need to do that as well.
So what I think I hear you saying is, as a surgeon, and just given who you are, that this is a public health issue and not just a privacy issue.
Absolutely. And I go back to the summer I spent in Roxbury this summer. I went to 5 Enough is Enough rallies, which were sponsored by Tito Jackson, and it was around youth violence. And we walked every Friday night around 5 different neighborhoods. Actually, there were 7, but I went to 5, where youth violence has occurred within weeks of us being there, and pointed out the houses of the young child that was walking down the street to get milk for his mother, who then got killed by some guy driving by in a car with gangs, and it's just tragic. So part of it's the availability of the guns. Part of there is the awareness of the issue and the community outpouring and more community policing and better youth programs to intercept kids are just heading for the gangs. So there's a whole agenda there. But part of it is the availability of guns. It's just too available.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
A question about the minimum wage. I'm sure you're aware that the legislature is debating a proposal to increase it to $11 in 2016. Which seems to me too little and too slow. The other side of this jobs question is something you addressed when you mentioned the person who had gone through the training program who was holding down 2 jobs, and his children were so proud of him. My guess is that those 2 jobs still don't pay enough to get him above the poverty line.
Right.
Unless we do something really dramatic with the minimum wage, it seems to me that the fastest growing sectors of the economy, which are service jobs, will not pay enough for people to live the lives that we'd like to see them live. So I'm wondering what your position is on the minimum wage.
Aggressive on the minimum wage. I agree we should get the $10.50 or $11 as fast as we can. I think the studies that have shown that, well, it hurts the economy or the smallest businesses, I think that, or it prevents young people from getting jobs. I think all of that has been offset by other studies that don't show that, and I think generally common sense has got to prevail here. And if people are working full time and they're still deeply in poverty, then we need to raise that floor. So I definitely believe we ought to get to 10.50 faster than as fast as we can, and support it. As far as what's going on in the legislature right now, I know the Senate may be trying to tie it to unemployment insurance reform, and that may be a good thing. I just don't think we should take 2 years to do it. So if we can quickly do that, let's do it. If not, we should detach it and just try and get the minimum wage passed. Yes.
So quite a few of us here were at the carbon tax panel at Babson last night and heard a very compelling argument in favor of the carbon tax. And there is a bill being proposed now in the State House, as I'm sure you know, and I'm just interested in your views on that and the subject of climate change in general.
I would have loved to have been there last night, by the way, and I was in Worcester at a City Lights Bar fundraiser in Grafton Street in Worcester, and my wife of 38 years, who grew up in Grafton Hill, was there with me, and thank God she was there because we had a great fundraiser because of her. So I couldn't make it, but I have heard about it and I know the issue. I'm very interested in the carbon tax as a vehicle to, essentially have the true cost of fossil fuel usage be borne by those who use it, and so the understanding is there. And of course, as are the proponents of the carbon tax, I think we have to find the right offset so that it isn't just additive, that it effectively is offset by either tax reductions or other mechanisms that effectively leave this on a net neutral position. So I definitely favor that, and I think that's where the issue is that is going to take a little while to work out, figuring out what is the right way to either have tax offsets or other means to make sure that we aren't harming the economy by having a large just additional tax. But as far as taxing the so-called externalities of carbon usage, I'm absolutely for it. I think it's a great idea. It's, it kind of is goes beyond the cap and trade idea, which has been very complex and difficult to administer. So I like it. I talked to Mike Barrett about it, the state senator, and he's a proponent of it, and I think I want to be part of the development of it over the next couple of years. And I think Massachusetts ought to continue to be a very aggressive leader on air pollution. I think we have a track record of having had some success by being aggressive. Well, some of us are old enough to remember acid rain and the problems of 20 years ago, and how by banding together as a region, by Massachusetts taking an aggressive stand with the region, we were able to ultimately prevail with a lot of Midwest producers of coal and other, using coal and other acid rain producers. I think we can do the same thing here. Probably not as effectively because this is a more worldwide problem, but I think by being aggressive in our region, by being a leader in our region, and by our state, the governor and the congressional delegation working very aggressively in Washington, I think this is the right place for Massachusetts to be. And I also think Massachusetts needs to continue to be a leader in the development of alternative energy technologies. I think it's one of those new industries that's a natural for us that we need to promote. Yes.
So, I'm Joe Fonts, native.
Another Joe. Good.
How do you feel about gambling casinos in Massachusetts?
I wish I was governor a few years ago. I didn't like gambling. I didn't like the casinos being passed. I think they were overpromised, and the revenues were oversold, and the costs were underappreciated in the debate that took place. So, in general, I don't think they're a huge panacea for the revenues that we need in the state, and I don't think that we've really come to grips with the true cost of addiction services and the other things that are going to be going along with these casinos coming. So I'm not a big fan. We have it now, and the question is what to do now. What seems to have been happening is communities are starting to turn it down. So in a sense, the communities are voting how they feel about it, and maybe that's the place to lead it right now. So I mean, it's either let the communities have their say, which of course is what the law and everything is set up to do, or I know there's a group now that's starting to see if they can create a ballot initiative around trying to repeal the law. I don't know where that's going to go, but certainly the communities are going to continue to vote, and right now they're sort of voting them down. So that's how I feel about it. I mean, the good part about them is it's going to create construction jobs, and that's good for our economy. On the other hand, the long-term job prospects in the casinos they're not great jobs, and they aren't anything to base our new Commonwealth on overall.
Do we have one more question for Joe?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. This is just a general question, but I'm just thinking of what Reich was saying, that Eisenhower, it was a Republican president, imposed a tax on everybody, 52% of taxes, really very high, including also the business ones. And now we had just recently, for example, people like Mitt Romney that was paying about 11-12% of taxes, and the middle class is paying on average 35% of taxes. Now, Massachusetts is also called Taxachusetts, okay? What is your position on towards the business, because you're being both also entrepreneurial, yes, right? So how do you see that playing around, the middle class towards other parts of the...
So I think you're right. There's a couple of different questions there. One is, do I believe in a progressive tax or making the tax system more progressive in Massachusetts? That'd be one question, so let me address that. Another might be the impact of the tax burden overall in our state as we are trying to effectively recover and grow our new economy. I don't want us to go back to Taxachusetts. I think that's a mistake. I don't think we need to do it. I think we can, we have a $34 billion budget. I know that there's a lot that can be done just with healthcare costs. If we had next year or 2 years from now, after we've moderated the cost trend in healthcare, if it was 39% of the budget instead of 40% of the budget, that's $150 million. And that's the kind of money we're talking about. So I think our ability to actually work within our current revenue sources is pretty high, and the other thing is as the economy does recover, and it's very spotty, but as it does recover, it does create more revenue. So the crying need for lots of new taxes right now, I don't see. I don't mean that it would never be, And I did talk about the infrastructure, the dedicated revenue that we need. So getting it to a more progressive tax structure, in my mind right now, is not because otherwise we're not going to be able to afford some of the things we want to afford in the state. I think we can afford what we need to do in the state. As far as fairness around progressivity, I agree. Progressive tax structures are better. This is going to would require a constitutional amendment in Massachusetts to change the income tax to make it more progressive. That's why when Deval Patrick floated the idea last year, in order to make that plan more progressive, he had to have offsets with taking some of the sales tax exemptions away, or putting more exemptions on, I should say, on the sales tax, because he wasn't able to just do it by changing the income tax. So it's a complicated thing about progressive taxes, but generally, I agree, people that have better means to do this ought to pay more, and to the degree we can do that within our state, I don't really have a problem with that. I don't think it's our answer to dealing with what we need to invest in right now. I think we have the money and we have the ability to invest in what we have to do right now. With the exception of infrastructure, which we will have to have some more revenue around going forward.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you all for being here tonight. Please join us Monday, December 2nd. Not here, but at the Wellesley Hills Library, the Hills Branch Library, when our Meet the Candidate guests will be Steve Kerrigan, candidate for Lieutenant Governor, and Attorney General Martha Coakley, who's a candidate for Governor. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you.